Okay, I think we are going live right now. Hi, everyone. We're going to give it just a few seconds to connect, make sure we are live on Facebook. Let us check. I see us. We're live. Hi, everyone. It's Alexa again and Allie here at Teaneck Creek. Tonight, we are doing our final installation of our Conversations from the Cottonwoods, which was our interview series talking about why it's so important to do things like citizen science and how to work with local government to better your habitat. Tonight, we are joined by two local a teacher and an administrator. So we have Terrence Williams, who's the principal of Ben Franklin Middle School, and Jessie Grant, who is one of their wonderful teachers, and we've had a privilege of working with for so many years. And we wanted to really highlight the importance of partnerships between local nonprofits and school organizations. So we are so excited to welcome them and to talk about how Teaneck Creek and the schools in Teaneck are working together. So I'm going to throw this over to Allie to start our questions. If you have questions, you can leave them in the comments and we're happy to answer.
Thank you, Alexa. Great. So Terrence and Jessie, we are so happy to have you guys here with us. We have been working with you guys at Benjamin Franklin for quite a while. Just to start off, I'm going to give you both a chance. Could you just tell me a little bit about your interactions with Teaneck Creek? Maybe mentioning potentially the greenhouse, class trips, things like that.
I think my story will be a little shorter because I know Ms. Gorant has a much lengthier history with the creek. However, but I came to Teaneck last year in July. So July 1 was my July 1, 2018 was my July 1, 2019. It was the day that I started in Teaneck as principal. And like, if you've ever been a principal or if you ever moved into a new office, as I was cleaning up the office, one of the first things that I found, there was a card with Alexa's name on it. And it said Teaneck Creek. So knowing that, I need to build partnerships and when I was interested in the Conservancy, primarily from some work that I've done in North with the Conservancy there. So I called her, I reached out, and within a few days we were meeting. And we were talking about how we can blend the work of the creek with some of the initiatives that I wanted to do, at Benjamin Franklin Middle School. So, soon after I reached out to Ms. Gorant and we were talking, and I just pretty much shared with her how excited I was with the partnership, that I thought would benefit the school and benefit the community, and it's been amazing since. I mean, we've done some amazing things already in just a year, and I'm looking forward to doing some more, and I'll let Ms. Gorant talk about some of the amazing things that we've done so far this year, and she can share some history with you, certainly.
Okay, so I think I started working with the creek maybe about 10 years ago, but initially it was for this class that I teach called Suburban Biodiversity. And initially I just would go to the creek with a group of kids and we would kind of walk around and collect samples of plants and come back and try to identify them. And then somewhere along the way, I think I met George Raskakis through a teacher, another teacher, Dina Grushkin at TJ. And he came a few years to talk to the kids about invasive plants. He visited the school, we visited the creek, and we would bump into him there. And then after a couple of years of that, I think I finally made contact with you, Alexa, and then we started doing something a little more formal where we would come to the creek and you would show us around. And we did a lot of projects, I think, based on things we found at the creek. If we thought we could identify a problem and then get the kids to try and solve it. So we did things like tried to plant more native species at BF. We cleaned up the garden, which the backyard, I guess, of BF, which a long time ago, Mr. Williams, used to be mud. It was just dirt. And it was such a hassle because when the kids would go out there to play for recess, they'd run through the mud and then they'd come upstairs and their muddy, like, footprints would be everywhere, chunks of mud all over the classrooms. And then it was hard to get them to play only on the blacktop. So eventually that was kind of revamped, and then we tried to modify that more. And I think we had a lot of help from the creek, the people from the creek, in doing that. So I think the creek has really helped to guide a lot of projects that we've done in terms of just more of the science of it, and the more the kind of expertise of plants and botany and that sort of thing. But a lot of it was kind of inspired by things that we saw and learned at the creek.
That's wonderful. Yeah. No, I think it's especially important when kids get to actually go out into, not to say the real world, but into the real world, so to speak, and they get to see nature hands-on. I feel like it has a different experience than when they're just in the classroom and examining a plant. Do you guys want to each speak a little bit maybe to the importance of hands-on activities?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have to, if you're gonna think outside of the box, you have to think, or you have to be outside of the classroom. I mean, classrooms are amazing places, to start, but there's so much more learning that can take place outside of the class. And again, Ben Franklin Middle School, it sits on, I don't know how many acres of land, but there's so much green space right outside the building that will lend to to great learning, which lend to the level of engagement. I recall, I don't recall the lesson, but coming outside and taking pictures of Miss Gorant and some of the students, I mean, they were amazed to have cell phones in their hand and they was taking pictures of various plants, and I mean, you can just see the level of enthusiasm, and they were right outside the school. So I think it's amazing to rely on that. It kind of pulls you out the textbook and even a video clip, so you can learn firsthand about what the offerings are in and around the school, campus, and or the community of Teaneck.
So one thing that comes to mind is a project we did. And I think this was in the early years when we would just kind of wander through the creek and we saw this stuff that looked like bamboo. And we were thinking, the kids and I were thinking, wow, there's bamboo in the creek. And so I think at that point we contacted George Raskakis, or somehow we determined that this bamboo was actually Japanese knotweed, and it was in species. So we had been learning about invasive species, but when we saw this one, we were, this thing is so cool. I can't believe all this bamboo everywhere. So then we learned how bad bamboo was. And the kids created this project where they cut down the bamboo, the Japanese knotweed, and they transformed it into bird feeders. Oh, wow. And they actually won this contest for doing that. I can't remember who was running the contest because it was a few years ago, but we got this huge banner for the school because they were able to take what was a problem and turn it into something that was a positive. I mean, we didn't cure the Japanese knotweed problem in the creek, but I will say that the kids went back to the creek on their own on a Saturday morning and cut down a bunch of Japanese knotweed and brought it all back to the school. And we made these, and it was just, I think that this idea of invasive species, it was like, oh yeah, invasive species. But then when you see the degree to which the invasive species overtake parts of the creek, the Japanese knotweed, or the mile a minute, and you see it rising up over these huge trees, I think that's something that you have to see it to believe it. You really can't believe how badly those invasive species can interfere with the ecosystem until you can read it and you read it, oh, that's too bad. But when you actually are standing in front of it and you see it, I think it makes a huge difference.
For sure. I think that was a great tie-in. I was actually going to ask, a little bit more about like STEAM and STEM programming. And so being able to use science and technology, I mean, Terrence, you were talking about they're using their cell phones to take pictures and identify plants. They were doing that at the creek even, but then also figuring out how to build a birdhouse out of these, you know, Japanese knotweed is hollow, which is pretty cool. So that's a neat, you know, building material. And then there's an art component, which Teaneck Creek throws in there, and they're arranging all of that. So it's really, really cool to kind of see that these hands-on experiences are hitting all of those topics and hitting all of those needs for a STEAM or STEM education, which is really great. So my next question is, we did a lot of citizen science works with you guys over the last year, which is a way to address real world problems by engaging citizens and everyday people in doing science work. Can we guys talk about some of the citizen science work that we did this last year at the Creek?
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I know you must be referencing the project we did with NEEF, you know, which I thought was amazing. I mean, it was amazing, you know, for a few reasons. You know, one, as we just discussed, we got a chance to bring students outside of out of the building, you know, and you know, we brought a lot of students outside of the building, you know, so the partnership with NEEF, Samsung, Teaneck Creek, and you know, I know there was some other organizations, you know, in Bergen County that were involved. I mean, it created an amazing learning opportunity, you know, for our learners, and you know, to hear the students, you know, one talk about, you know, their views on pollution and how, you know, they should really, you know, take a stand, or people should take a stand to kind of preserve, you know, the community. I mean, it was, I mean, and you know, none of them, I mean, not that we expected it, but they weren't prompted. They were just speaking from their heart, and you know, they were talking about their community. You know, a lot of the learners, you know, who were there, who participated, many of them never been to the creek. So I thought that in and of itself was amazing. I mean, you know, Teaneck Creek is in their backyard. So it will certainly raise their level of consciousness in terms of, you know, preserving, you know, the green space around them. And you know, even if they were to decide to get involved or find something for their grandma to do, to come help clear the area, you know, some of their grandparents, you know, it's like a all hands on deck, you know, initiative. And I think the students is a great place, you know, in terms, like, it's a great place to start in terms of pushing that initiative.
It creates that bigger community of learners, for sure. We engage all generations by engaging the kids. I think that's great. Jessie, do you want to add? That NEEF project is...
I do. That NEEF project was really amazing. And I think one of the things that I thought was so good about it was it kind of, like you're saying, it brought a lot of people together. So it brought together the people from Samsung, who are right here in Teaneck, which I think a lot of the kids didn't know. It brought together the people from the Creek. And then the people that you brought in to help out were, you know, what the kids would call real scientists, right? So I think that gives them a sense of, oh, you know, this is work that people do. And if I'm interested in this kind of thing, I can go and make a living at it. And it gets them to see like a pathway from school to real life or career life.
Right.
And I think that's a really important aspect of it. You know, the career education piece, but also just the real world learning. I mean, even in that bird feeder project I was talking about before, the Bergen County Audubon Society, Don Torino and Maureen Longo came to my room and helped the kids figure out what was the best style of bird feeder that they could use. I mean, when kids bring experts in from the outside to guide their learning and their problem solving, I think that's really a really beneficial thing for everyone. I mean, as teachers, we know what we know, but no one knows everything, right? So, and I think it's really important for the kids to see that if you don't know something, there is most likely someone out there who does. And if you start reaching out and networking, then you can really solve problems. So, I mean, I thought the NEEF project was fantastic. I think the kids loved getting in there and seeing all that the things that they normally would see in a textbook or maybe even on an exciting YouTube video, but to actually do it and be in the water. And I think that all of those things combined made it a really, really valuable experience.
For sure. I think I'm so glad that you mentioned Bergen County Audubon Society. I just wanted to congratulate you for being their award winner for one of their Teachers of the Year. We nominated Jessie because of this wonderful project that she helped spearhead at BF. And we talked about NEEF, which we didn't mention, but it's the National Environmental Education Foundation, which provided Teaneck Creek a grant to have these citizen science greening STEM programming. And because Jessie was so important in getting all of that figured out, we nominated her and she won. So she is Teacher of the Year. We're so excited. So that's really exciting for us to be a part of that too. But yeah, Allie has the next question.
So I wanted to ask, I'm going to address this one towards Jessie and then the next one to Terrence. But so Jessie, can you tell us actually a little bit more about some of the projects that your biodiversity class had done, how they relate to citizen science and engage students?
Okay, so basically the projects that we do in that class, or that class is designed around going out into the Teaneck community, either right here, right at BF or the whole Teaneck community, and discovering what kind of problems exist and figuring out how to solve them. So it usually starts with a trip to the creek. And some of the projects they have done have surrounded things like invasive species or attracting pollinators, right? So when we kind of revamped that back garden area, we were trying to create a pollinator garden, or incorporating a pollinator garden into what's already out there. So what they did was they went into the creek, they looked around, they looked at your butterfly garden, they decided that this was something that they wanted to tackle. And then they did some research about what types of plants that we could get to attract the pollinators. You guys came in, I think the Audubon Society came in, a couple of different, the superintendent at the time came in, and they made a presentation. They spent a lot of time doing research and trying to figure out what was the best way to handle this problem. And then they present their solution, and they either get approved for their solution or they don't. But they've done quite a few things over the years. So they did the garden this year, and they did the pollinator garden. They've done things, though, that are more locally based, like right in the school, where one year we looked at air quality, and they proposed trying to improve kind of the indoor environment of BF, and they were able to get plants for the inside of BF and a spider plant for every room. But they did that based on, I think the inspiration is always the creek, because they go there and they think, wow, right here in our backyard is this beautiful place. And they start to think about the environment, and they start to think about their impact on it and how they can improve the quality of it. And so then that inspiration leads to discussion, which then leads to the identification of a problem. One thing they always want to try and tackle, and I talked to Mr. Williams about this earlier, is the cafeteria, because the cafeteria creates like a lot of waste, and there's styrofoam in there, and they really always want to tackle that problem. It's a big one. But ultimately the inspiration comes from the creek, but then it kind of can sometimes be very tied in when they choose their project, or it can be something just environmentally related.
I really like what you were saying about how the students have the opportunity to actually identify the problem and choose what they want to study. I'm sure you know better than I do, but I think that really helps kids to feel engaged, and they have like more of a buy-in, so to speak, into the project, instead of just being told, because so often students are just given something like, okay, you should care about this. And instead they get to find something they actually care about that's local to them and in their actual community. So that's so exciting. That's wonderful.
I think also seeing something come to fruition, unfortunately, I think we were gone before the garden was fully built. But Mr. Williams sent me pictures, and then I showed the pictures in the Google Classroom. The kids get, I think it's a great sense of empowerment, you know. Kids, we all have a voice, right? But kids sometimes, I think, maybe feel like, well, I have to wait till I'm an adult to do something to make change. But really, they can make change. And so I think it's a great message for them to see their efforts come to fruition.
Yes, I love that. I like the segue of the garden too, because talking about things that you're working on outside of the classroom as well. But my next question was for Terrence. From an administrative perspective, how do you think that engagement with outside organizations benefits students and the community? And then also, do you have any future plans for other projects that I know with COVID, there may be some restrictions, but yeah.
I think it's it's part of our responsibility as administrators. If you think you're going to find success just working within the building with the resources you have, and of course we have many resources in the staff, but we have to reach out to families. We have to reach out, to community organizations, for-profit and nonprofit, that will aid in the work that we've been doing. And I'm proud to say that we've been doing it all along. When I got to BF, we had three 3D printers, I believe, and that was a generous gift from an organization outside of the school. We use those 3D printers to make masks. When there was a PPE shortage, and we gifted Holy Name Hospital, with masks, to help our essential workers. So that was something that's great. Now that we have this amazing garden that was built, just imagine what's going to happen without you. Of course, it can benefit the students, but it can also benefit, a community of students and or other individuals in and around the Teaneck community. So the partnerships are amazing. NEAF wouldn't have happened without a partnership. The garden wouldn't have happened, without the partnership. That's why even this year, as both of you know, and Mr. Gorant, I didn't want to just partner with Teaneck Creek. I wanted to formalize it. So we got our Board of Education, to approve a formal agreement between our school and the district and Teaneck Creek, so that we can, just let it be known that we have an amazing working relationship that we want to continue. And it's not just for BF. There's many other schools in and around. There's 2 schools right outside of the creek. So it's really, if we have to lead the way, by all means, but we want our elementary schools involved. We have a new school that was just opened, the Theodore Lacey School. So, these are amazing learning opportunities, for our students. And we want them to understand, this is how you pay it forward. This is how you pay it forward. You find an organization that will help you, and you find ways to help them back. And when they become professionals or adults in and around the Teaneck area, hopefully they will contribute or find ways to contribute to these organizations.
Yes, it's symbiotic.
It's great to be a resource for the schools. We've done work with TJ and with Hawthorne before, but really being able to spread across Teaneck. Teaneck isn't our name, so we want, the entire community of Teaneck to be a part of the Creek. And so to be able to expand that to the kids that don't necessarily live next door. BF is a little bit of a, further drive away. It's great that they can explore their entire community, I think, by being able to come to the Creek. So that's exciting. And why I think I like this partnership a lot. And we have a lot of plans that, we have kind of COVID might be throwing a wrench into some of the plans that we had. We talked a little bit about the greenhouse, and that was something that we wanted to be hands-on in at the school and revamping and working with you all with. But obviously with COVID, things are not as we anticipate. So a question for both of you. What do you think citizen science looks like and engagement will be with this hands-on kind of work in the wake of COVID-19?
I don't, I think, I don't know where we are it's 7 months in. I mean, we learned to work around this pandemic. I mean, the garden was still built. If you look at the NEAF project, even though it cut short some of the trips, but the final product, you would think that we were out filming and these kids were engaged in these activities for weeks. I mean, but we will we'll do what we need to do and work around this pandemic because I know through Ms. Gorant's class and some of the other classes, the students are crying out for for ways to even to be engaged, and even if we provide them with some sort of activity where they can come off the screen for a little while because their faces are planted in the screen. This is the way that we're communicating. This is their life, 7-8 hours a day. Not even counting the few hours that they're using to do homework. So they're living in a computer screen. So an activity where we can send them in their own backyards or to do something, safely and socially distanced in and around the community, I think will further promote this work that we'll do, that we are doing. And once things are safe and when we can go full throttle, they're gonna be looking forward to running back to the creek or other areas, Overpeck Park, etc., to continue this work.
So, an idea just came to me. When you said this during this time, I teach a different class called Global Concerns, which focuses on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And right now we're partnered. I'm also part of this organization called IEARN, International Education and Resource Network. And we are partnered for a project called One Day in the Life with a school in Belarus. So my kids in Global Concerns have just made their first contact with the kids in Belarus. And one of the things that we're doing is just kind of like introduction to our community. So the kids went out and they took pictures of Teaneck. So they looked at, what makes Teaneck special or different or whatever, what makes Teaneck Teaneck. And so they went and they took pictures of the different houses of worship, and they took pictures of the shops on Teaneck Road and Cedar Lane and the different styles of houses. But I think it would be really interesting to kind of make that environmental. So it's like, here are our Teaneck native species. Here are our Teaneck invasive species.
Cool.
Here's our creek, conservancy. What's your nature like? And the kids in Belarus can go out and take their pictures. And I think that would create such a kind of almost like a database for kids and it serves a lot of purposes because it's really, really fascinating to see this classroom in Belarus, and literally there's wallpaper on the walls and they're sitting. I mean, it's just so fascinating to see how different schools are, but yet in so many ways how similar. And so I think that would be such a cool thing to do. It's like we can't necessarily always be meeting face to face, and maybe we're right now kind of confined to our homes. Our kids, our school kids are. But there are things they can do that could be really cool, and not necessarily maybe STEM, because they wouldn't necessarily be building things, but there's a lot of things if you keep your eyes open. Before school started, I was thinking I was going to be teaching suburban biodiversity in the beginning of the year. So every time I saw like a praying mantis or a katydid, I'd be running around taking pictures of it. And I think the kids can get into that kind of thing, and it creates enthusiasm, and you could create something out of that.
Right.
So I see like there are a lot of possibilities. I mean, ultimately, I think being in person and being able to do the things hands-on and really get into the creek and see it all firsthand is the ideal. But when you can't do that, I think there are some things that the kids, really can do.
That's great. I really love that idea of having, it's such a great citizen science to even document and have, so that we know what's available in Teaneck, even not just for these kids across the world, but so they know what's homegrown. There's a lot of cool apps I'm sure we could utilize to figure all that out.
Right, there is one, right? There's a
iNaturalist.
Yeah, iNaturalist, yeah. But just even the birds, like, do they have the same birds we have, or do they have different birds? You know,
Right.
we really got a lot of representation from, Belarus is one climate, but then if we, and the iron, that's the beauty of iron, is it's just the whole world. So
Right.
you can get countries from the Asian continent, you can get countries from the African continent, you can get North America, you can get, Kentucky, people in Kentucky are on there, and
Yeah.
the kids in New Jersey are like, oh my gosh, Kentucky, so you really can, we can learn so much virtually.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's really cool. It's a great way to engage and at least learn about other cultures, even if it's not science. I mean, culture is so important too. That's really great.
Right, but that's the crux of science, right? Is we share.
Right.
Share, yeah.
The data, everything, exactly. Yeah. My final question is kind of a general for when times are normal, things are going good. What are the general barriers to engaging students in activities outside of the classroom? So like, I know we worked on getting kids, I think we had 120 kids scheduled to come to the creek, and figuring all of that out was a feat in and of itself. So what do those look like for you guys?
I mean, I would say, I mean, and it used to be a barrier, but I don't think it's no longer a barrier, and that's just the resources, the money. I mean, there's whether it be through Teaneck Creek, the district, we have a grant writer, who's been doing amazing work already, with Teaneck Public Schools, and our building, we've already benefited from a beautification project that we're working on right now, in the building. But I don't like to even think of barriers. I mean, I don't mind them because one, for me, I see it as a challenge, and it just increases my enthusiasm as I try to get things done. But
I love the positive twist.
Yeah, I mean, challenges are, like I said in the NEAT film, opportunities turned inside out. So
Yeah.
if they are challenges, we'll find ways to remove those challenges. But one thing that that I've already done, and we are just awaiting the students' return to the building, is we have already earmarked funds for STEM and STEAM initiatives. So we do have monies already sitting and waiting, to spend. We just purchased 8 more 3D printers that every science lab will get. So we've gone from having 3 to 11, and all of these these tools or resources will continue to help do work within the building, with the hope that we can take some of the learning outside of the building. So I mean, if I had to name a challenge, chasing students down for permission slips. I mean, but we have 3 aggressive secretaries that will get the parents to bring them in, and once they see the amazing work that's being done, that will motivate them to do what's needed so they can be a part of this amazing work.
I mean, I think some of the challenges are the things like the logistics and the scheduling, but I have to say, Mr. Williams is so supportive. So you need a supportive administrator, someone who, you need everybody on the same page, I think is so helpful. And so if you have someone who's in charge, who's on the same page, and you have the teachers who see the value in it, and the kids are excited, when you bring all those things together, it works, I think, really well. And the partnerships, so the fact that you guys are always there and willing to help us, I think that works out so well. And the fact that Mr. Williams is so supportive of the efforts. So I think that there are challenges, but they're easy to overcome if everyone kind of comes at it from a good place where they're trying to make it happen.
Great.
I agree. No, I mean, I certainly agree. And, just to echo, I mean, this is, I think when I first met Alexa, I shared how, my goal is to build the botany program or horticulture program at the school, so that the students who inherit, this community that they live in as children, so that they'll take care of the green space. And school is an amazing place to learn. You can learn it at home, but school can also be a driving force as well. So, we'll continue to support, these initiatives and try to get some of my peers in other leadership positions to do the same.
Wonderful. Yeah. And we're excited actually for when things go back to semi-normal. We're excited to have the kids back out to the creek and actually be able to keep running full steam ahead with all of our programs. I know we mentioned already, we got cut short with our knee program. And it was sad because so many of the kids were so excited to come. And even though it ultimately had a mostly good ending, they still got to perform a lot of the things that they had planned. Eventually, we do want to bring them back out so they can complete the rest of their citizen science testing.
It's so great for long-term continuation too. If, the 7th graders get to do one program and then they know they're going into 8th grade doing another, it's a really great way of tying in all of that they've learned year over year. And keeping that data is really great for us. We get to know, okay, we've got these macroinvertebrates, or we did this water testing on this day every year for the last however many years. That would be wonderful, I think, in terms of just support for the creek and just a fun data set that the kids could, comb through and do some fun work with. So we're excited to see it continue and be a long-term project. And I'm excited to get into the school. I think it would be really fun to get into that greenhouse and get our hands dirty with the dirt and soil and do all that when we can be back in school.
We have an amazing partner right across the street, Ms. Marshall, who, her children went to BF. She comes in, she helps out, she volunteers. She and her husband, they've been amazing assets already. And we cleaned the greenhouse out. It's about ready. And now that we are paying more attention to it, again, expanding the classroom. Where it's literally it's a lab, but
right.
It's a great place to learn. And we have indoor, we have outdoor, and we have the creek, of course. So
it's great, and I love to hear that there's community members that are engaging outside of even just parents. That's really important too, to have the full engagement of the community.
That's right. Yeah, retired. And it's a great space. For someone who lives in and around the school to say, can you preserve my plants throughout the winter? Because you have a greenhouse. That's an amazing partnership where we can use some of the students to water them, to take care of them, and then when the springtime comes, we hand them back. And
they have that ownership of it. That's really great. I love that. So that was our last question for you guys. We don't have any from the audience right now, but if we get any in, we will definitely send them to you so that we can answer those in the comments. We wanted to thank you guys so much for taking time out of your night to join us on this. The video is up on Facebook, and we're going to be sharing it to our YouTube page. So if anyone has any questions that they want to ask, please feel free. And we wanted to thank everyone for joining in tonight and for all of our conversations from the Cottonwoods. This was a great series of interviews that we were so happy to put together to just kind of get the word out about citizen science and working with your local nonprofits and community partners. So thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll be around. Come visit the creek. Bike lane is open. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.